I sometimes wonder if people realize that beliefs are one of the fundamental shapers of our reality of experience in this world. So, when I say the reality of experience, we have to understand we all have a perceived experience, we have an internal experience, we have feelings, we have emotions, we have internal conversations, dialogues, thoughts, reactions, responses, decisions, and choices we make in this world. And beliefs is the soil in which all of these grow. Beliefs have a huge impact in how we experience life. So for me, when I coach people, when I enter into dialogues, I listen for the statements around their beliefs. I listen to the challenging beliefs, the conflicting beliefs. I listen to the empowering beliefs, and I very often spend a huge amount of time just talking about beliefs. So I want to share some of the concepts that I do know and that I have learned about beliefs, and I trust some of you guys will use it to enhance your interaction with your clients and possibly even yourself. Because if something doesn't work on me, um, then how do I know it's going to work on a client? So it has to work on us. We start with ourselves first. So let's assume that some of you guys will take something out of this for your own lives. So the first thing I want to mention about beliefs is that most people don't sit down and think about their beliefs. Beliefs have an impact in our lives, and we see the fruit or the manifestation of the beliefs in our lives. We don't sit and think what causes some reactions or some emotional states in our lives. And very often the root cause of a huge amount of things we experience lies within our beliefs. But when we say beliefs, the first thing that most people think about is obviously spiritual beliefs. Our beliefs are much larger than that. We have beliefs about ourselves, our capabilities, our past, our present, our future. We have beliefs about our environment, our ability, our qualifications, our skill sets, our talents. We have beliefs about how other people perceive us. I can go on for hours talking about the complexity of beliefs. All I want you guys to realize is that we have a myriad, millions and millions of beliefs, some of them very, very strong, some of them not so strong. But the average human being has million beliefs that shapes their journey of life, that shapes their experience in this world. So we cannot be in this industry and ignore beliefs. It's something that we have to absolutely focus on. So let's start with one of the first elements about beliefs that we need to understand. And that is that we're not born with a preset structure of beliefs. Beliefs are formed and installed and edited. So those are the three first elements we need to understand. They are installed, they are formed, and they are edited. So why am I saying those three? Well, when I say they are formed, the journey we go on in life, the experience we have, the interaction we have with this world is one of the areas that creates beliefs. If I go into an area and there's a group of people, I interact with that group of people, and I get a very particular response from that group of people, that will form a belief about that group of people or my interaction. There can be a whole different variety of different beliefs formed around that. So as we journey through life, that creates formations of different types of beliefs. The second area, and this is kind of really, really important, is a lot of beliefs are installed in our lives. So my background, my socioeconomic group, my culture that I grew up in, my education, the relationship my parents had, the topics they spoke about, the friends that came to visit them when I was a young kid at house, my friends at school, the teachers I had, the preachers I listened to, the sports team captain, the coach, my the bullies at school, the people I liked and disliked, every small experience I had in my early shaping years installed a huge amount of beliefs. And very often we find people that at a much later stage in their lives, they're still holding on to a lot of these beliefs. I'll give you a practical example. My father was a surgeon, and we grew up in a house where it was hammered into our heads that you are only successful if you become a surgeon. Being a GP, a normal doctor, is not even successful. You have to be a surgeon. And I remember in my early years, I was very successful in the business. I owned, in my early 20s, I owned a 4-bedroom house. I had, nice cars, a stable income. wife, children. I was really at the top. I want to say less than 1%. I was extremely, extremely successful. But because of the belief that was installed or kind of forced into my mind from the house I grew up in, I had no possibility of experiencing success. So my belief was withholding a positive experience in my life. So a lot of these beliefs come in through teaching from the outside in our early years, and they influence our experience in our lives as we journey through life. So very often we can achieve greatness, but there's no realization of it. Very often we can achieve beautiful relationships, but there's no reality experience about it, simply because beliefs function as a filter. Beliefs alter what is happening and on the outside and my internal perception of it. Beliefs are very strong in shaping our reality that we experience in this world. So it's crucial that we talk about beliefs. The third point about beliefs, the beliefs are constantly edited. So just because I have one belief today, it does not necessarily believe or mean that belief will be with me for the rest of my life. Beliefs do change and they go through a formation. We change our fashions, we change our political understanding. In some cases, we change our spiritual beliefs. So we need to appreciate that our beliefs can be edited, can be altered, and does change. So what is important about those three ways that beliefs are created in us? The importance of it is to understand the absolute fundamental. And that is, if I meet someone with a limiting belief, with a belief that creates a negative experience in their lives, I need to understand that belief was either installed, formed, or edited, which basically means they were not born with that belief. It's not part of them completely. It's not a life sentence. Beliefs can be altered. Beliefs can change. And that's a very, very empowering statement, because if I have a limiting belief, I can change my belief system into an empowering belief. When I have a client that's got a limiting belief, if I understand how, I can bring shift. Now, the big error most therapists or coaches make is when someone verbalizes a limiting belief, we want to take on the belief directly. Now, human beings are strange. When we have a belief, we also want to protect the belief. We believe that obviously that belief is correct. It's our belief, so therefore it must be correct. So, sorry for the coughs, guys. I'm busy in the last end of a horrible flu and a bug and a virus, and it's just the last resident is still present. So apologize if my voice is not strong and I cough occasionally. The cool thing about beliefs is we know we can change them, but if we take them on directly, my client will dig their heels in and they go into defensive mode, because appreciate they are holding on to that belief. They've chosen it, they've allowed it in, they've had it present for a while. It's part of who they are. Our beliefs is a huge impactor on our identity. So if I challenge a belief directly, I'm to a certain extent challenging the identity, who they are. I'm not really serving them. In fact, they'll strengthen it, they'll dig their heels in, and they go into defensive mode. So if I take on a belief directly, I'm actually making that belief stronger. So that's not an approach that we want to take. So what does help? Well, understanding some of the elements where and how beliefs are shaped is critical. So one of the first things that we can do is realize that all beliefs have an origin. They come from somewhere. Beliefs didn't fall out of the sky and all of a sudden they're in us and now we go through life. Beliefs has an origin. And I would very often enter into a conversation where we unpack the origin that shaped the belief. And what is really, really interesting is the moment we enter a conversation where my client understands how this belief was shaped, where it originated, the impact and the influence it had on their lives, now I'm putting them into a position where they can make a well-educated decision. And the decision is a very deep decision about the belief. And I've seen it happen in front of my eyes, where the moment someone realizes what the source of the belief is, and that at that time, that source was impactful in their lives, If they realized at that time they submitted to that source of information, they possibly admired it. It could have been a parent or a teacher. And they realized that that belief was taken out of context, that that belief actually did not serve them for the rest of their lives. It's very easy for that person to make the internal self-decision or choice to shift the belief. So I cannot get them to shift their beliefs. I can merely enter a discussion, find the root or the source of the belief, unpack it, unpack the experience, unpack the cultural influence it had on them, unpack the method it shaped their upbringing, unpack the effect that it even altered or influenced their education, unpack the effect it had on their relationships, in their career, in a variety of different aspects of their lives, but then really allow them to realize that this belief came from an external source, not internally. And if it came from an external source, I can therefore change the source that I draw beliefs from, which allows me to shift my internal belief. So get down into a conversation. Sometimes it's a very short conversation, 10 minutes, and it's like you can see the penny drop in the client's head. Sometimes that conversation takes a little bit of a longer time, but identify the source. All beliefs has an origin. All beliefs came from an external source into me. And once we have that realization, once we realize the source, once we realize that that belief could have possibly served me for a season of my life, but no longer serves me, we can make a life-changing decision and we can really just shift that belief into an empowering belief. All right, so we understand that any belief can either be a belief that I'm going to say deflates your internal power or increases it. So I'll give you a quick example. I grew up when I was born, I was diagnosed very early with what's called chronic bronchitis. I remember as a young kid, I couldn't lie down and sleep. I had to sit upright, physically upright. If I would smell something, I would go in an extreme cough. I still have bronchitis. It's still manifest in my life. It's still resident. It's still a horrible, horrible thing to have, very limiting. But what was interesting was my parents had a very good understanding about bronchitis. And they literally kicked me out, made me mow the lawn, made me go and cycle hundreds of kilometers. And in a very early stage of my life, got me to develop my lung capacity. Because yes, bronchitis does exist, but if we develop the lung capacity, we actually come out stronger on the other side. So was that a limiting belief? Absolutely. In the early days of my life, I remember I watched athletics. I was a huge fan, still am. Loved athletics. And the one thing that I was mesmerized by was long distance runners. Now, I was extremely fast, so sprints I did very well in. I remember at school I broke records and whatever. But what was fascinating was the fact that my limiting belief said, because of bronchitis, I cannot do long distance. And I entered some long distance races, and the moment I started wheezing, the moment something started happening, I withdrew and I went into a shell. When I entered this industry and I started to understand the whole concept that I spoke of now, the origin of belief, I sat down and I asked myself the question, all right, so where does this belief come from? What's the impact it had? Where has it withheld me from enjoying certain things in life? And I remember very, very clear. I remember, in fact, where I was. I was sitting at a house in Weltevreden Park those years, at the dining room table. I remember it so clearly. And I remember sitting there and getting angry at this belief that has withheld me. I then made a decision to challenge it. I made a conscious choice to prove that the belief is wrong. In other words, I can do endurance sports with bronchitis. And I think it was anywhere between 3 and 5. I can't remember the exact amount of years. between 3 and 5 years later, I was cycling about 1,000 kilometers a week. On a weekend, I would get on a bicycle and go do a 300-kilometer ride. Now, you need strong lungs to be able to do that. And trust me, bronchitis, if it does manifest, can hold you back. So, from personal experience, here's the solution. Identify the belief, ask what the limitation is, and then ask what else about this is true and what could I possibly do to prove that I can overcome it. What can I do to prove that I can overcome it? Now, every time we set up a goal, it has to be smart. In other words, it has to be simple, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable. So start off with a behavior and action that's within the ability and the achievement ability of that person, and let them do something that proves the belief wrong. Something small. Once they've done that, you can elevate the goal, you can elevate the goal, and you can elevate the goal. And you can take them through a process where if the brain experiences there's a different, more empowering belief, there's a possibility of a new belief, then the brain tends to grab this new belief much easier and it doesn't give the old belief as much power. I hope that gave you an answer there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So that concept, I think, leads to a second point that's possibly very important, and that is that as humans, we need to understand that we can cultivate beliefs. So do we sometimes have limiting beliefs? I think every human being at some level does have a limiting belief. If we don't, then we're probably not human. I think you must be an extraordinarily phenomenal creature if you don't have any limiting beliefs. But we can create an undercurrent of empowering beliefs through cultivating an altered mindset. So what does that mean? It simply means that if we can get into a routine by becoming aware of our beliefs and how they limit us, we can cultivate a mindset by simply asking a very simplistic question. What else is true? What else is true? So I'll give you a possible example. I speak to a lot of people that have got this dream to become public speakers. They want to stand on platforms and they want to impress a large audience. And we know that one of our greatest fears as humans is public speaking. And so they go into the whole nervous system, their hands are shaking, they can't get out words, their minds go blank, all of these things. So I normally sit down with them and I, without them realizing, start talking about the beliefs. And I ask what else is true. So I will delve down and start asking what are the reasons you want to get on the platform? What will that give you? What's the benefit of it? What is the ideal outcome that you would love to have when you do get onto the platform and you start speaking about things? So we start talking about the positive results of taking action, and we start ignoring the fact that the fear is holding me back from taking the action. So that's a bit of trick that you need to grasp. We don't talk about the fear holding me back. We talk about the potential positive results of me doing it irrespective of the fear and me doing it extremely well. So what we do is we train the brain to not focus on the negative belief. We train the brain to focus on the belief that is going to come from the potential positive outcome. Now, why is this important? It's important because it teaches us how to cultivate positive, empowering beliefs. If we understand that, then we can understand that beliefs are flexible. Just because about one topic, public speaking, I have limiting beliefs that say, I'm nervous, I don't speak well, maybe someone in the audience is going to bite me. The same brain can have, if I do this successfully, I can change lives, I can sell more books, I can step up and get a larger following that will buy my product. There's a huge amount of positive results as well. The truth is that the experience we're going to have is not the one nor the other, or the fact that they exist. The experience that we're going to have is which one of these two do we focus on the most. And so here's the thing we need to understand. Beliefs can exist in duality. In other words, I can have one concept and I can have a limiting belief around it, and I can have an inspirational belief about it. The question is not the fact that both these beliefs exist. The question is which one of these beliefs is the strongest? Which one of them has got the overriding power? Which one of them are truly in control? There's a statement made that I love repeating very often, and that is, if you have two wolves and one lives in the shade and one lives in the sunshine, which wolf will grow the largest? And the answer is straightforward, the one you feed. It's not the fact that the one lives in the shade and the one lives in the sun. Which one will you feed the most? That's the wolf that's going to get grow the largest. So when I deal with clients and I hear limiting beliefs, I would sometimes switch over and ask, what else about this is true? Find the opposing, the opposite, positive, inspirational belief, and start cultivating the strong belief, strengthening it, feeding it. Now, it sounds simplistic, but very often what you would need to do is structure a set of actions, behaviors, something the person must go and do to prove that the inspiring, the positive beliefs do exist and they can actually grasp the benefits of it. So let's take public speaking, for example. I'll get the person to practice and go write a phenomenal speech, read it, and in some way give themselves recognition that they have great content to deliver. I'll go and get them to go write a concept around the audience that they are going to talk to and how their content will serve the audience. So what I'm doing is through behaviors and actions, I am not just showing them the positive intent of the belief, I'm allowing it to manifest. I'm allowing them to experience some of these positive rewards. The moment that happens, I'm strengthening that positive belief, and eventually the positive belief becomes so strong it overrides the negative or the limiting belief. And then we step into the level of courage. Courage, in essence, if you really go and unpack it, it is having two beliefs, that this is dangerous and it serves me. Courage means the way it's going to serve me is so powerful that I can override the fear of the negative. That's courage. It's knowing that you are in a fear-based situation, yet you act irrespectively of it because the positive outcome is so overwhelmingly strong. And that's the element about that flexibility, that ability of human beings to override the negative fear, to override the limiting concept behind the negative fears. I hope some of you guys went, aha, got it. Yeah, I'm going to use that one. The secret to that one is set up actions, behaviors your client can do, which is in their capabilities, in their skill set, so that they reframe their own beliefs, empower the inspiring part of it, so it can override the negative belief. One thing that I do with a lot of people that come to me, because we live in a strange time. We live in a time where my emotions, how I feel, has become extremely important for a lot of people. I want to go so far and say people are more sensitive than what they were 20 years ago, 50 years ago. When we grew up and you were sensitive about a topic, you got a flat hand or a slap with a fish against the head and you just moved on. The world we live in now has cultivated a social acceptance about sensitivity, and we've got to respect that, and we've got to operate and work inside of that framework. So one of the things that I do is I teach people to start recognizing beliefs, to cultivate an awareness about beliefs and question beliefs. So when someone is in an emotional state, when someone is, let's go with the positive one first, when they're happy, I teach my clients to learn to become aware of the state you're in. In other words, when you're happy, start realizing that you're happy. Start noticing what created the happiness. Start noticing how you interact with others when you are happy. Start noticing how words influence you, how your environment, your situation in life impacts you when you are happy. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a meta state, a higher awareness state. But I very often focus it And start with emotions. Start when you're happy or when you are depressed or sad and feeling fragile, when you're anxious, when you're feeling empowered, when you're feeling courageous. How do you know at that stage you're feeling it? What are the signs telling you you're feeling it? What led to it? What are you experiencing in that moment? And what do you know about that state that is true? The reason I do that is because when we start becoming aware of our state and we start analyzing what is this doing to me in the moment, it also reflects my beliefs around it. And it truly inspires the human brain to start realizing in certain situations, I am actually empowered. I can actually shift how I feel about this, which means I'm actually altering the driving belief about my emotions. And I start realizing that I'm not always a victim of my emotions, but I'm empowered to sometimes alter my own emotions. Now, that's a belief. And the moment you realize that, it's quite an empowering belief because now you don't become a victim to external influences that are constantly shaping how you feel. You start realizing that the way I feel is actually driven from the inside, and I can take control of it. Like a captain of a ship steering the ship, I can now steer the direction in which my emotional state, my belief structure, my thought patterns, and everything else is running. So start cultivating a higher state of awareness with your clients, because the moment that starts manifesting, something happens in the belief system and they don't become a victim of their beliefs, but they become the architect of their beliefs. And that's a massive, massive, amazing, amazing shift for a lot of people. I hope that helps someone. I want to just add something to that I did make a note of and I did forget. So in the shaping of beliefs and when people become aware of how they feel in the moment, one of the questions I usually ask them is to raise their awareness of, is there an external source that was part of the catalyst? In other words, is there something on the outside of you, be it a person, be it a social media platform, be it something you read, be it a movie you watched, what on the outside of you had an impact? What on the outside of you had a massive influence that shifted your belief or your emotional state? And then I started asking the question, well, that which is on the outside of you, does it really have the power? Does it really have the understanding? Does it really have that magic wand to actually influence you? Does it have the right to influence you? Does that influence come from the right space? Does it come from a platform where it's serving you, or is it coming from a platform to break you down? So what I'm doing there again is you actually teach people to start becoming aware of external influences. External influences influence our state, but they also influence our beliefs. And if we can install a wisdom belief state, that I am wise, that I'm aware, then we allow our clients to create a filter, in other words, a shield of external influences. Do they serve me or do they break me down? If they serve me, I embrace them, I take them, I install them. If they break me down, dilute who I am as a human being, my shield is up, I analyze it differently. I ask the question, how does it serve that person? Is it coming from the right state? Then I can make an intellectual choice. Am I taking this or am I putting it in file 13 and it's going into the dustbin? Is it something that I need to embrace or not? So that state of awareness is, I think, one of the most empowering things that we can take our clients on a journey of. Hope that helps. And yeah, unless there's a question, I want to move on to our next point. And our next point is an interesting one, and that's the self-fulfilling prophecies from our beliefs. Now, let me explain. The human brain has got a funny gland in it. It's called the reticular activating system. We call it the RAS. The RAS is responsible for arousal of an intense thought. I'll give you a practical example. The last time you bought a motor vehicle, for the first week, 2 weeks after you bought the motor vehicle, you noticed more of those vehicles on the road. And the simple reason is it's not because there were more of those vehicles on the road, simply because your RAS was activated. Something was aroused in your brain to filter the external reality and focus on this fact that's true. If we have a belief about ourselves, if we have a belief, and I'll give up again a practical example. In fact, I had someone this week. Um, every man, the words were, every man that I've entered into a relationship in abused me. Every man that I've been exposed to in my life has taken something from me and only left me worse off than what I was before. Every man. And then this is not a teenager that said it. This was a mature woman with quite a few years of experience. Every man. Now, if that's a belief and you enter the presence of another man, you have got a high possibility that you might be living in a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, what will happen is the part of your brain that's now aroused, that filters the external experience, might see your perfect ideal partner, might see a phenomenal person, could be a great friend, might see a person that could assist you, guide you, mentor you, shape your future into a magnificent way. But because your brain is holding on to a belief that they're going to take something from you, they're going to break you down, you will filter the experience to the point where you find what they are breaking down and what they're taking away. So beliefs very often become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they can very often, through that, hinder our beliefs or our experience, our route that we're taking in life. A lot of people look at beliefs and they look at empowering beliefs or disempowering beliefs, and they think they live in isolation. And that's actually not true. All our beliefs are actually interconnected. They're interconnected. Beliefs are very, very interconnected into other beliefs. They influence other beliefs. They shape other beliefs. The beliefs can be layered. And when our beliefs connect with our value systems, the things we value in life, it literally creates our identity. And our identity will always manifest in who we are in this world. I don't believe that we can always look at beliefs as one item in isolation, because there's an old saying, neurons that fire together wire together. So very often what we'll find is that if someone has got a very strong empowering belief, in the family of beliefs, there would be other empowering beliefs, and the same is true for the opposite. If a person has a very strong limiting belief, because there's an inconnectiveness of beliefs, there's most probably a grouping of limiting beliefs. So again, let's take the lady that said all men do this. They take something from me. So in that category, there was also men are pigs, they only want one thing. Men always cheat. Men drink too much. Men are selfish. Men are toxic. Men put their friends first and not me first. One of the things was you cannot communicate with men on social media. They will always go vulgar. So now we know that's not completely true. Are there some truths in there? Possibly. Are there some men that are like that? Absolutely. Are all men like that all of the time? Absolutely not. So it's not a belief that's cast in stone, but what happens is these beliefs tend to cluster around each other. And and here's what we need to understand, the moment they start clustering around each other, now they're creating a network. And the network becomes stronger than the individual belief. So if you're going to try and through logic, dialogue, I almost want to say logic argument, try and unravel that, it's not going to work. Because as you challenge one, call it, try and visualize this thick cable with millions of small cables that have been woven into each other. If you try and cut one of those small cables, the energy would just flow to all the others and they'll just get strengthened and work a little bit harder. And now imagine those, if you cut one cable through argumentation, through deliberation, you've now convinced the person that that one singular belief is not necessarily true. That, a cable usually transfers energy and electricity. That energy now needs to go somewhere else. And unless there's a very strong, empowering belief in its place, all that's going to happen is that energy is going to strengthen that network, that interconnectedness of the rest of the limiting beliefs. So when you work with beliefs, you've got to be extremely careful to realize that solving one single belief that is creating limitation in a person's life does not bring the full solution. There's usually a category or an interconnectedness of a variety of beliefs that has been shaping around one single strong negative belief. And it's that interconnectedness that really has a massive, massive impact on a person's life. So there are times when we have to not just talk about that one singular belief, but we have to chunk sideways. We have to open up and ask, where else in your life do you experience something like this? What else, are there any areas of your life where you have similar kinds of reactions and responses? It's critical to unravel the complexity of what that grouping of beliefs actually create in the person's life. And again, I'm going to say this, it's hardly ever singular. The one impacts and influences all the beliefs and everything else around it. Cool. The one thing that I do enjoy about beliefs, that I love about beliefs, is, and this is a different topic, but this is also something I very often coach people on. Beliefs have got the amazing ability to make us rise up in the midst of adversity. What does that mean? I've seen people go through life and I remember a couple of years ago, I had a client in a 6-month window frame. He lost his business. He lost his house. His wife divorced him. He realized his child was addicted to chemicals, to drugs. Anything and everything you could possibly imagine to go wrong in someone's life went wrong. And I had a session with him. It was very emotional. He cried quite a lot, mostly, interestingly enough, about his wife that left him. And he was very, very emotional. But he constantly had a statement, and I can't remember the exact words, so I'm going to just give me, poetic rights here. It was based on the concept, I can rise, I will rise again. I can rise, I will rise again. And I watched him, I coached him through the process. It was literally, I would say probably about a year and a half later. And the shifts he made in his life was mind-blowing. It was absolutely just mind-blowing. And I prescribe it absolutely to the role of the strong, empowering belief in him that created a state of resilience in the midst of the worst possible conditions that one can very often imagine. Empowering beliefs shape our present and our future. When I coach people, I would very, very often not just go in and try and solve their problems. I think that limits us. I would very often also go into a conversation, delve deep into their belief structure, and find very strong self-empowering beliefs that they have. I will unpack them and look at what other areas of life can you apply this empowering belief that it'll serve you. And then I'll start and create supporting beliefs around that empowering beliefs. Just like we can have, if you remember that image of the negative cable of all the negative limiting beliefs, we can create a string of supported and interconnectiveness of positive and empowering beliefs that pull us literally towards a positive outcome, a positive experience in this life. It provides us with an deep inner strength to apply courage in some of the most difficult times that we can go through. It's extremely good to promote mental health, self-awareness, self-identification. It doesn't have to feed the ego, but it can feed my personal identity and strengthen my personal identity. It's one of the best things that I can build up inside of my client to allow them to really build a phenomenal resilience against the negativities of life. I don't believe we should go through life like an ostrich with a head in the sand. Life happens, bad things happen to good people. I've not met someone that has not had something negative happen to them. It happens at some levels and different levels to each one of us. The fact that it happens is not what it should be about. The fact that how we react, how do we respond when it happens, is what's crucial. And the driving force on how we respond when things happen lies in the empowering beliefs we hold on to. Empowering beliefs shapes your present state. Empowering beliefs shapes your future. Now, in some cases, we have people that historically had negative things happen to them. Trauma, very negative things. They go through life, they build up resilience, they enter a state of empowerment. I very often would go into a conversation and ask, all right, so in the past, you had a few things that has happened. With the knowledge you now have, with this amazing collection of empowering beliefs, creating this beautiful shield of resilience, what can you draw from your past that can make you stronger today? How can we take the negative that's happened to me and reframe it into a positive? Now, I want to go back to the conversation I had with a gentleman that lost everything. He lost his business. He was declared bankrupt through the courts, which was horrible. It's horrible because it's a 10-year sentence and you can't really do much around it. And what was really, really, really amazing, and I remember this conversation with him. We spoke about the business because he's an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur in every fiber of his being, and he wanted to start another business. And he actually found a family member that was prepared to start a business under their name, but he would basically run it because legally he wasn't allowed to do it himself. And my question to him, it was a bit of a challenging question. I said, okay, so explain to me. I see in you this extreme level of excitement and this passion, this enthusiasm, but I also see that you've just been through an experience literally 18 months ago. What is it you now know that you didn't know before that's creating this passion and this excitement? And he started listing. He said, well, what I did, now here's the secret. Here's the way resilience manifests. He started talking, I remember he mentioned different elements about cash flow and who to employ and things he had to, because he was in the building industry, things how he had to manage things on a building sites and everything else. But he took every error that he made, identified it, and then he said, well, what did I learn from it and what can I do differently? So that's the manifestation of resilience. A strong belief system has got the wisdom to understand that negative things happen. But it also has the power to understand everything that happens has a learning. It might be a hidden gift, but there's a gift. There's a learning. There's something we can take from it that we can apply in the present to create a better tomorrow. And I spoke about this earlier. I said, we need to create an awareness, a mindfulness. Some people would call it a state of reflection, possibly even about our beliefs and how they influence and impact us. What I have found quite interesting is, and I've gone on that journey and I've taken some other people on the journey, where we become very mindful of our own beliefs. We become very mindful of the behaviors, the reactions, the responses they create that manifests from them. And the more we apply this awareness, the more we in ourselves, I almost want to say, feed this high level awareness. What I found that becomes really what fascinated me was it starts to remove a certain level of judgment about others. So once we start becoming aware that inside of me, I'm holding on to certain beliefs and they impact me. I held on to certain beliefs in my past and how they impacted me. And I realized that beliefs are not cast in stone, that beliefs come, go, that they shift, that I can have limiting beliefs, that I can have empowering beliefs. The moment I start realizing that about myself, I start realizing that the same fact is true about others. And very, very often what we tend to do is we judge people on their external behavior. But if I understand that a lot of my own external behavior, the way I react and respond to other people, is conditioned and is rooted initially in the beliefs I held on to. And if I understand that not all the beliefs I hold in my mind is necessarily true, because my thoughts are not facts. My beliefs are not fully, completely true. They're true for me at that time, but it doesn't mean they are true in the fullness of the word. The moment I realize that internally, I can now start realizing that about other people. So when I see reactions, responses, behaviors from others, instead of judging what I see on the surface, I can enter into a dialogue that is more belief focused. And here's the fascinating thing. I might allow them in that conversation to realize that they have a limiting belief. Or I might realize that they've actually got a phenomenal belief that I don't have. I might just learn something through that process. It's neither good nor bad. So for me, when I see something on the outside, one of the states of awareness I've put in a huge amount of time to practice is to not to enter into judgment of what I see on the surface, but to enter into dialogue about what is behind that, and that's the belief structure. So, in my industry, we call it an attitude of curiosity and fascination. And when we adopt that attitude, not only am I learning from someone else, but there's a spin-off. I very, very often learn more about myself. And it's interesting how that attitude of curiosity and fascination, not looking at the surface behavior, but trying to enter into a dialogue of what's behind it, what's the beliefs they're holding on to, what's created that beliefs, where does those beliefs come from, how that has, and I do believe this, made me wiser, given me a deeper level of understanding about other people. And the results of that is judgment is removed. I have found myself at this stage in my life that I apologize much less than what was needed when I was younger, because I act from a different non-judgmental platform, and I absolutely love it. I'm turning 62 in about a month's time, and I think I'm almost at the window where I might start realizing what wisdom is. Not being wise, but I'm at that wisdom, and I do believe this statement I just made about not judging behaviors, but looking at the belief structure behind it, is an element that will increase my wisdom. So as an individual, I am going to put in more energy and focus and apply it in, in more areas of my own life to serve myself and those around me better when we understand beliefs better. I hope some of you guys got something out of it and that it was a learning to some of you.